Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, executive editor of the American Prospect, David Dayen. On the State of the Union, on the state of inflation, state of our supply chains. Also on the program today, Joe Biden makes it through that very same State of the Union and scores big with viewers. Russia's invasion of Ukraine reportedly kills at least 2,000 civilians and counting. So Russia claims control of Kherson. EU contemplates Ukrainian admission. In Texas, Democratic Socialist Greg Casar wins big in his Texas primary. More than likely will be a new congressman from Texas. Meanwhile, Cisneros and Cuellar head to a runoff. ACLU in Texas, meanwhile, seeks to block Texas from investigating the parents of transgender children for child abuse. Major League Baseball begins to cancel some games, pushes opening day in a labor dispute, and the entire season could be in jeopardy.
Oh, I wonder why there's a labor lawyer at the head of the league. That's probably why. Tamp down the players.
Meanwhile, the Biden administration rolls out a new COVID is over but not quite over plan. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is Wednesday. Here to tell us and put that into context with the rest of the week, Emma Vigland.
Hello.
Emma.
It's hump day.
It's
Great.
hump day.
I got that over with.
There you go.
Yep.
That's right. That's Emma's catchphrase.
That's what we call it.
There you go, folks. She coined that phrase. So send the emails in now if you want to complain about the fact that you heard about it before Emma was even born.
And just to explain, that's because the week is like 5 days, and this is like the middle day, and on the other side of it, it's almost over. For me, it's entirely over, though. I'll be gone. I'm going on vacation.
Oh my
Let's
God.
go. That's
tomorrow.
Right. Yep. Well,
The 3rd
Matt is
tomorrow.
Matt is across the bigger hump. That is the entire like really the like this is your fulcrum for the entire year, right? Do you want to talk about where you're going?
I'm going to Spain.
That's so awesome.
I know. It's
Adios.
Yeah. Arriba.
Yeah, go ahead. No.
I don't know.
Where in Spain?
I took 4 years of Spain. I'm going to Madrid and Barcelona.
Wow.
Never been, so I'm excited.
I've never been either. I'm jealous.
A lot of partying in Barcelona. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, we also got really good deals on hotels because it's cheaper. I mean, it's crazy. I was not.
But air flights not so cheap.
They weren't so bad. They get worse. They're starting to get really bad, like into March. And
it was Florida was nuts.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing is like
domestic flight.
Yeah,
domestic flying super expensive.
And the Caribbean is just you have to be rich. Like I don't know, it's crazy.
You know, I little secret. had been building up my American Express rewards points for about 8 years. And
is that what you used on the flight?
that is exactly what I used.
I used my
And then
Chase
they sent me a 35% like rebate.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was just informed that all of my American Airlines miles I accumulated over all my traveling with TYT, which is like domestic flights, so it's not that many points, but they're going to expire unless I use them by the beginning of April. Like, that's kind of BS. I haven't been flying, but that's a whole separate conversation.
Matt, maybe you should get on the. Okay, folks, let's get to it. The speech last night. I mean, we're going to talk to David Dayen about it, but I look, and let's be clear. I have my issues with Joe Biden. In terms of, you know, the proposals that he attempted to pass, I thought those were pretty good. I thought a $5 trillion, $3.5 trillion, a little bit less so in the $1.75 trillion so-called Build Back Better bill had good things in it. And a lot of his failures were, in my estimation, strategic and tactical, and whatnot. The speech last night was not for me. I suspect not for anyone in this room. In fact, I would probably argue not for anybody listening to this show or watching this show. The speech was for the 16% of those people who supported Joe Biden when he came into office and gave him a favorability rating, and no longer give him a favorability rating. Maybe that includes some people in this audience as well.
That's part of the inflation focus, right? I mean, that was why that was some of the emphasis, I would say.
I think that was also why there were no masks. And at that
learn to live with COVID.
Learn to live with COVID. Now, and we'll get more into this with Dayen, but if I am Joe Biden's advisors who were ecstatic at the idea of COVID starting during the key part of the primary and the general election in 2020, when Joe Biden wouldn't have to hit the campaign trail, I don't think that's a controversial point. I think I would imagine strictly as a political matter, the Biden administration saw it as an opportunity to talk about Ukraine and Russia. Because to some extent, I think Joe Biden, frankly, and, I think people know my feelings in terms of like the implications of NATO, but these are all decisions that were made literally, in some instances, decades ago. But in terms of like the way that the Biden administration has reacted up to now about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I think they've done quite a good job, because they have completely tamped out any notion of no-fly zones or anything that would escalate in a military fashion. There's a sense that they're still giving, to the extent that they can, Putin an off-ramp, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that helped. And so Ukraine ended up being about half the speech.
Yeah.
And the rest was, plans and platitudes that I don't think are going to necessarily take place. We're going to talk to David Dayen about it. But overall, if you measure these speeches in the way that I think a lot of people who don't really follow politics measure them, you look at how many times the Republicans had to stand up and applaud, and how many times, particularly Susan Collins, had to stand up and applaud. And they did. They had to many times, many more times probably than we've seen, certainly over the Obama years. And in that sense, I think it was a victory for Biden. And the numbers, I don't have the polling right in front of me, but the numbers apparently were somewhere in the neighborhood of like 60 to 70%. I think CBS had on its polling on how people did.
Yeah. On how Biden did?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm trying to find it right now too. You have it?
Yeah, let's put that up. Well, we'll save it for Dayen. But here is one of the things that Biden said that was really uncontroversial. And what's fascinating is the American public does not seem to be aware of what the job numbers are in this country. They don't seem to have a clue about it. And polling has shown this. And in fact, I had that poll. Do you have that poll? Pull up that graph. No, the one that the one from Axios. This is the voters' view on U.S. job gains. Do you think the country is experiencing more job growth than usual? 19%, about the same, 33%. More job losses, 35%. And then they ask, which of the following statements do you think is most accurate? More jobs created last year, 28%. More jobs lost last year, 37%. Not sure. Last year was the highest number of jobs created in the history of the country. Here is Sean Hannity responding to Joe Biden making that claim.
And tonight, if the world was looking for any American leadership, they didn't get it from Joe Biden. This speech defined America last, not America first. And by the way, Joe lied over and over and over again. We can start with jobs. Take a look.
That's one of the first things I did as president was fight to pass the American Rescue Plan because people were hurting. We needed to act, and we did. It worked. We created jobs, lots of jobs. In fact, our economy created over 6.5 million new jobs just last year. More jobs in 1 year than ever before in the history of the United States of America.
That is a flat-out lie.
All right, pause it. Now, first off, remember that he's saying more jobs than created in any single year in America. 6.3, I think he said, million. Hannity, who wants to prove that he was lying, shows that in February 2020, the jobs report said there were 152 million jobs, more or less. Mm-hmm. And to prove that there wasn't 6.3 jobs created last year, he showed that in January 2022, there was actually 3 million less jobs. What he doesn't tell you is that somewhere in 2020, we lost 9 million jobs.
What happened in 2020?
Well, I'll tell you what happened not in February of 2020, not COVID.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what happened the next month. But so Hannity cannot deal with it, and he just quickly blows through this. But if you really want to know the truth about jobs, you got to fact check it with a reliable news organization.
The paper of record.
The paper of record is a great way to do it. Let's see what the New York Times says. They did a fact check on this. They can tell you right now.
I would love to never hear the words fact check ever again in my life, but here we are. Every paper has to do it now.
And here it is, the fact check. Biden's State of the Union, this comes from the New York Times Twitter. Our economy created over 6.5 million new jobs last year, more jobs created in 1 year than ever before in the history of America. That is only partially true, according to the New York Times. Oh. Why?
A light green, a mint, if you will.
Yes, because Biden is correct on the numbers. However, the government only started collecting this data in 1939. So...
But it would, I mean... it's only...
The population was also a lot smaller.
That's what I was about to say. Like, there's a way that there it has to be true, given like the population growth, but only partially. But
there's two responses to that.
Yeah.
One is you got to be effing kidding me. Biden should have said more jobs created in 1 year in America before the history and including the history of all record keeping in America is the way he should have said it in his speech to be totally true. Yeah. Or you could also take Emma's tact, which is you had 100 million people in this country around that time. Maybe it was like 120 by 1939, maybe a little, 100.
Yeah, but before that, there was still child labor a little bit more rampant. So
That's right.
You could include that.
That's right. He should have said adults.
Be more specific if you want to pass the New York Times fact check, Joe Biden.
If you were working on a farm, did you have a job? We could never know. So there it is. But and it's fascinating. What we've had is a series of months where the job numbers have been underreported from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, run by a Republican. I'm sure that is completely coincidental. But even ADP and Moody's, which does the private thing, and they come out today. You're going to see February's job numbers come out. I think it's Friday from the BLS. ADP is saying that they revised their numbers by a swing of 800,000. They thought we had lost 300,000 in January. In January, but it was actually 500,000 gained according to them. So there's a lot of jobs, but there's issues of inflation. We will talk to David Dayen about that issue and more in just a moment. He'll be joining us. But first, I should tell you that everyone knows. Not everybody knows, but I think most people know I have a sweet tooth. It's not even like, it's not, that's a nice way of saying like I have some type of compulsive disorder when it comes to like sweet foods.
Right. Just right? That.
I mean, you've seen me around like right now, I actually see those chocolates.
Bradley.
That Bradley never took out of the...
We knew. All right. So how long has that taken? Right. So Bradley told me. I was
just looking like this and I just saw them. I see them out of the corner of my eye.
You were never supposed to see that.
Well, you didn't hide it. It's literally a bit of a snack. What do? Well, this is going to seem weird. I have cereal. That's right. I do have cereal. It's Magic Spoon, though. And you know what that means? That means 0 grams of sugar.
Yes.
That means 13 to 14 grams of protein and only 4 net grams of carbs in each serving. It's only 140 calories in a serving. You get to be my age. You can't mess around. You put on a pound, it's going to take you a long time to take it off. It's keto friendly, it's gluten free, it's grain free, it's soy free, and it's low carb. And you can build your own box, right? They ship it to you. They have multiple flavors. You create your own custom box. You got cocoa, you got fruity, you got frosted, you got peanut butter, you got blueberry. You have my favorite, the cinnamon. And cookies and cream is also up there, I got to say. Peanut butter and maple waffle. It is a great nighttime snack. It's also great. I can feed it to my kids and not feel bad that I'm giving them sugary stuff, and they love it too. Go to magicspoon.com/Majority Report. You grab a custom bundle of cereal and be sure to be using our code, our promo code Majority Report at checkout. You will save $5 off your order. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they refund your money. They don't ask any questions. That is called a no questions asked refund. Remember,
no question zone.
Exactly. Get your own delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/Majority Report. Use the code Majority Report. Save $5 off. Thank you, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring this episode. Also, don't forget, our Brooklyn show sold out. Our Boston show, still some seats left. You can find it at MajorityLive.com. But when you go to MajorityLive.com, if you hit on the Brooklyn link, you can go and buy a live streaming ticket. But if you sign up for the AM Quickie, you will find in today's AM Quickie a code that will give you more than 50% off the cost of streaming the show.
Wow.
I know.
At that.
It's not a business move.
You did a business.
It's sort of like a promo thing, but it's not.
Yeah. Well,
no, it is.
No, it is.
It's not a business. I took some money out of the pocket, but put it in whatever. I don't know.
Okay.
All right. Speaking of which.
Speaking of what?
I don't know. Want to welcome back to the program? Oh, we got to cut to a quick break, and we'll be right back with David Dayen.
Rocky start here.
Yep. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Joining us, the executive editor of the American Prospect, David Dayen. David Dayen, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Here on the new setup.
Yeah, we have I mean, when you watch this back, as I know all you do every time you appear on the program, you will see,
and every other day,
higher quality on our video. Let's start with this. Let's start with this here. Did you see the speech last night?
I did.
Okay. Your overall thoughts. Let's start right there.
I mean, I think that there was a weird kind of nostalgia in this speech for a time at the beginning of 2021 when there was a thought of a lot more possibility.
Yeah.
It seemed like a lot of valuable time and real estate was taken up touting policies that have no chance of passing.
I mean, almost, it seems to me that was half the speech. The other half of the speech was Ukraine. And then, I mean, but on some level, to me, it sounded that it was sort of, I mean, I felt like this is how Republicans must feel like I felt when I would watch Reagan speak, which was, this is just all platitudes. None of this is going to happen. And it's so frustrating that everyone has to clap on some level.
Right. I mean, there really isn't a lot of time before the midterms. And it actually, the speech shows the limits of popularism, right? I mean, everything that Biden...
Popularism is.
Sure. I mean, the popularism is this idea that's been put forth by David Shore and Matt Iglesias that says that what presidents should do, what political parties should do is highlight their most popular ideas, and that will bring them to victory. And some of that is pretty self-evident. You should not run on unpopular things if you want to win a popular majority. But this shows the limitations of it, because I'm sure everything that was mentioned in that speech last night is very popular. Every poll that I've seen after the speech was very positive. He was talking about things that are broadly shared as priorities by the American public, but none of them are going to get done. And so if you don't deliver on any of these things, you're just setting people up for yet another failure and reinforcing the concept that Democrats talk a good game, but they don't get the goods. There was another alternative, and it was hinted at in some portions of the speech with new announcements on some executive actions that we can talk about, where a lot more of the speech could have been taken up with. We have disagreements here, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get everything done. This is what I think we should do, but I'm not going to wait. And here's where we're going to make progress on the pandemic, on inflation, on these other issues.
Well, what you're saying strikes a chord with me, because there's the flip side of like popularism in a way that, or it's not really the flip side. I guess Biden went out of his way for 2 minutes to kick defund the police, and he was aggressively against it. And that, I'm sure, polling for defund the police is not good. I'm sure that the Democrats and the centrist Democrats were probably pounding on his door saying, let's get out ahead of this. In the midterms, this makes me vulnerable. We can't have the Democrats be associated with defund. But Biden bringing it up and saying we should fund the police more, does that prevent Republicans from attacking him and saying that he is soft on crime and is with the radicals and BLM? That's never gonna happen. Instead, he brings it up gratuitously to kick the left. He contributes to the stigma of defund in the process, and then he's still going to get tagged with the stigma that he piles onto in his speech. And that's insane to me, but and shows a real lack of imagination that's evident in his presidency, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, of course it's not going to stop him, because Biden has been saying this consistently since he was a candidate for president. that he does not support that he supports more funding for the police, et cetera, et cetera. It didn't stop them then, and it's not going to stop them now. We have an interesting kind of mirror kind of image thing happening with respect to Republicans, where Rick Scott, who's the head of the Republican arm of the campaign arm of the Senate, put out this report on what Republicans would do if they took power. And one of the items said that they would raise taxes on the 47% of Americans who don't pay taxes, which would be this huge tax increase on half of the country. And Mitch McConnell got out and said, under no circumstances are we going to sunset Social Security.
We have this video. Let's play this video because Rick Scott's proposal was not only to tax the 47% of takers, to use Mitt Romney's language. It was also to basically sunset Social Security and Medicare
within 5 years. Yeah.
Which was surprising because Rick Scott's company made so much money on defrauding, maybe it was Medicaid, that it's surprising that
Florida. I mean, like literally everyone there is on Social Security and Medicare. Yeah.
But this moment here is Rick Scott, and you made this point on Twitter. Rick Scott is not some backbencher in the Republican Party. He's in charge of the Senate election committee, essentially. Yeah. And here is Rick Scott, and then McConnell comes right after him. Rick Scott must have known this was coming, I guess. Play this clip.
So I hope all of us do our part to do everything we can to hold Putin accountable and make sure the Ukrainian citizens keep their independence.
There he goes. Walks away.
About Senator Rick Scott, who's introduced an agenda that Democrats have seized on, includes tax increases. It's been very controversial. I wonder what your thoughts on this are.
Well, Senator Scott is behind me, and he can address the issue of his particular measure. If we're fortunate enough to have the majority next year, I'll be the majority leader. I'll decide in consultation with my members what to put on the floor. And let me tell you what would not be a part of our agenda. We will not have as part of our agenda a bill that raises taxes on half of the American people and sunsets Social Security and Medicare within 5 years. That will not be part.
Anymore. Now he was very specific, so it could have been 4 or 6 years, could still be on the table. But you know what's amazing to me about this is this is going to be the end of it. The press is largely going to go like, oh, well, that's a dead letter. However, this whole defund the police thing, if there was,
it's a complete perfect parallel, right? The leader of the party, the leader in this case of the party in the Senate, shot down a request. Now, this request came from a much higher ranking official than anyone who has ever talked about defunding the police. I mean, maybe Cori Bush has said it, but she is a freshman member of the House. This is so it's a real perfect parallel. And, will we see this in every Democratic ad from now until November? Will we see the media discussing this insistently between now and November? Just figure it out. This is exactly the same thing.
Is that a failure of, I know the media is complicit in this, but it seems to me that's a failure of the Democrats, right? On one hand, I think like Chuck Todd, I think I read said something like Joe Biden should have been more professorial, which is like literally the 180 of what he would have said during Obama's speech or whatever. It's like, if he hadn't said like he was too professorial, if Chuck Todd had never uttered those words, like I would be shocked. But it really is like incumbent upon the Democrats to hammer away at what Rick Scott said and make sure that every single American, when the word Rick is uttered by anyone, they have an image of Rick Scott in his head saying cutting Social Security.
And I mean, Democrats have done that before on Social Security, way back in 2005 when George Bush was attempting to privatize it. Back in 2010, 2011, when the Ryan budget became synonymous with these kinds of very, very draconian measures. So it's happened before. Will it happen again? I mean, I do think it's incumbent upon the party itself to make those things work for them and to assemble all elements of their ability to do that messaging. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But I mean, we certainly know that the Republican Party does not miss any opportunity for anyone, including some guy with a sign somewhere, says something that somehow reflects badly on the left. That becomes the biggest story animating everything that they talk about.
So to get back to Emma's point, though, like in Joe Biden doing that, is that like, why did he feel like he needed to do this? Like, I hate to bring up George Lakoff from back in the day, but right, don't think about an elephant type of situation. If they're so concerned that it's an issue, was that Joe Biden signaling to the moderates like, I'm with you guys, or this is a sop to whomever, or was it like a legitimately trying to sort of? Why would you?
First of all, we have to understand that Biden sincerely believes that, right? I mean, he does want to.
I agree. I mean, he does. He doesn't necessarily have to say
he has for 30 years, right? I mean, he was the architect of the '94 crime bill. So, I mean, I think it's a sincere belief. I think he feels like he believes, to the extent that centrists and people within the party have been saying this, he believes that rhetoric that this is harming Democrats and that I need to step out in front of it. Now, interestingly, on the same night that this happened, over in Texas in their primaries, one of the big victories for progressives was a guy named Greg Casar, who won a district that is a weird district that stretches, like it's got a little bit of San Antonio and a little bit of Austin. It's a very gerrymandered district. But he was an Austin city councilman who was hammered for reducing funding on cops. And he won resoundingly with over 60% of the vote in the primary, and whoever wins the primary will win the general election. He's going to be in Congress. It didn't hurt him to be associated, alleged, or however true it is, it didn't hurt him to be smeared in that way. So the idea that it's such an automatic loser that it destroys the party brand now and forever. I mean, my belief is that what is destroying the party brand is its inability to get anything done that they said they would do. And that is part and parcel because of the same centrists who are whining about defunding the police being unwilling to break with their corporate donors and actually pass the Biden agenda.
I think Rashida Tlaib basically made that point after the speech, and we can talk about that a little bit more. But I want to get back to your argument about whether Biden should have sat up there and talked about the things that he could do. I mean, obviously, we have talked to you in the past about the day one agenda, and people should go check that out. And there are some things that he is doing, and I want to get to that about changes in maritime rules that are going to directly deal with the supply line. But just as a political matter, and maybe I've just become jaded watching so many of these speeches and seeing largely their irrelevance in terms of any type of indicator of what's going to happen. And to the point where I'm just looking at it in terms of like probably the way they are, which is just like, is this going to help our poll numbers? Right. And it seems to me that I think the people put up this statistic about the inflation thing, right? This is, I guess, my first piece of evidence that I would suggest that this speech is really not about indicating what I'm going to do. It's really just reorienting people's perspective on what I've done or what I haven't done. And among the speech watchers, right? This is who the audience is for, and then also how it spins off in the way that's broadly reported in the press. Will Joe Biden's policies lower inflation? Before the speech, only 48% said that it will, and 52% said that it wouldn't. After the speech, 64% said that it will, and 36% said that it wouldn't. It's a 16-point swing, and
well,
are you kidding me?
His explanation, I want to say, was pretty good.
But I mean, and they're the same policies, we should say, right? I mean, there's no difference between the policies, but that megaphone is important. And there wasn't a moment that Biden framed his agenda in these terms quite so starkly until last night. I mean, it was always the case that the Build Back Better agenda takes on the main drivers of higher cost of living that we've seen over the last 4 decades: education, housing, healthcare. Interestingly enough, the inflation that we're seeing right now is not driven by any of those things. In fact, tuition's falling. The inflation we're seeing now is driven by like used cars, autos, food, and energy. It's a completely different set of problems and policies. We can talk about that. But it is true that, you know, if you lower the cost of healthcare and childcare by subsidizing it or by, you know, giving better funding, if you build more homes, if you allow Medicare literally to do price controlling by you know, negotiating the cost of prescription drugs, then that will bring the price down. But I think there's a short-term and long-term impact. The short-term is what you just saw, right? That, if you message better, you get people to understand what you're trying to do. That's short-term. Long-term, you're not going to be able to do that because Joe Manchin has already said, like minutes after the speech, like, we're not going to do any of that. So where does that leave you? So I look at prescription drugs as a great example here. So what did Biden say in the speech? He brought out a guy in the First Lady's box who was a diabetes activist and said, let's, the bill I have lowers the cost of insulin to $35 a month. Let's do that. We should all do that, and let's negotiate Medicare. Another way that he could have done this is said, up in the First Lady's box is a guy who is a prostate cancer patient who's suffering because he has this drug that he needs to survive called Xtandi. And this drug, even though it costs $30,000 a year for a full year's course in Japan, it costs $180,000 here in the United States. And this guy up here in the box has petitioned the government because we created Xtandi with funds from the National Institutes of Health and the U.S. Army, and he's petitioned us to take away the patent for Xtandi and allow generic competition to come in to drastically reduce this price. And today, I am announcing that we are going to do that. So that's another thing that he could have done, and that would have an immediate impact, not just on Xtandi. I'm talking not about a hypothetical. It's the real thing that's happening that I've written about. This particular drug, there's a petition active live right now that the National Institutes of Health is supposed to respond to say, we're going to march in, which we have the right to do under the Bayh-Dole Act of 1980. We're going to march in, take that patent, and allow generic competition to come in, which is already approved at the FDA, to lower drastically the cost of this particular drug. And if you do that, you say to every other drug company, we did this for this drug. We can also do this for your drugs if you don't get with the program and start lowering the prices here. So that would be something that's similar, saying, the message is, I want to lower the cost of prescription drugs, but the difference is I'm actually doing it. I'm actually lowering the cost.
Right. I mean, is there an analog with insulin? I mean, I imagine that there's got to be some mechanism in which, I guess there
was a petition for Xtandi. There could be a petition for Humalog for insulin.
We're not, in this instance, we're not talking about the speech per se. We're talking about whether he's going to do these executive actions, right? Because
but it's about signaling within the speech. Are you going to signal within the speech that you want to do all these things that you're not going to be able to get done, even though you have the majority. And there's this, because people don't understand the process of politics very much. They think Democrats have the majority for 2 years and they didn't do anything. So are you going to do it? Are you going to promote your agenda that way? Or are you going to promote your agenda with things that you can actually take care of and then point to and say, I took care of this?
I think just ultimately he's just got to do stuff. Yeah, I don't think there necessarily, frankly, has to be a direct line between him saying we're going to lower insulin prices by legislation and him just doing it by executive action. I don't think that the American public's going to be upset about that. It's almost like the equivalent of I'm pitching a TV show, and in one instance, this is the pitch. I've made the sale, and then I deliver something that might be a little bit different, but in substance is the same. That I think is okay. It really is going to come down to Joe Biden has really about 4 months, 5 months, maybe 6 months, to be generous, to do things by executive action.
And let me add to that, though, that there's some stuff getting done in Congress. Now, it's not the big ticket items, but I thought it was interesting that he mentioned in sort of a half a paragraph, like, we've had 80 bipartisan bills and I passed them all from X to Y to Z. But he didn't say anything about what they actually were. Like, one of them, for example, is this banning of forced arbitration in sexual harassment and assault cases, which is the first sort of counterattack on the effort by corporate America to block access to the courts. And that could have gotten a much bigger treatment in this as something that I did. You could have had a sexual harassment victim up in the box and said, we're honoring you, and members of both parties came together and we passed this thing to make sure that you get your day in court and you can hold these powerful interests accountable. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you tout that? Why would you just say, he said it in 3 words, like, so justice for sexual harassment victims or something. I forget the exact terminology that he used, but he said it for like 2 seconds. Like, why wasn't that a bigger, that's an accomplishment?
I can't even begin to fathom what the thinking is on some of these advisors, I think, in the White House, in terms of that's just too woke. The idea that you protect people from sexual harassment in some fashion. But all right, so with that said, that he didn't outline, doing any executive.
I just thought that the speech took a lot of time on things that are ultimately going to be unrequited, and this is your main messaging opportunity before the midterms. This is the one moment when all the lights are on you, and you're talking about stuff that's not going to happen and is ultimately going to disappoint your base. In addition to taking gratuitous shots at them. I mean, maybe you take gratuitous shots if you're also saying, I'm giving you X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to actually do it. But you're taking the shots and saying, and to compensate for that, here's a bunch of stuff that's not going to pass.
I guess maybe I'm just jaded. I just keep thinking about Ronald Reagan saying, I'm going to cut, I'm going to shrink the deficit and the debt, and then he expanded it. I'm going to cut your taxes, and payroll taxes went up, and the sort of famous Social Security deal. I mean, and yet it's what he said that got I look at that inflation stuff and I'm like,
clear it's because the economy got better in 1984. The reason we could say morning in America was because they broke the back of inflation and joblessness, which in 1982, which by the way, Reagan did horribly in 1982, because joblessness was over 10%. Everything went down and just in time for 1984. Biden has that opportunity, right? I mean, the pandemic is starting to subside. He sort of declared victory against it in that speech. To the extent that a return to sort of a more normal position in terms of the variance between goods and services, maybe that helps a little bit on the supply chain side. And then the one announcement that he did make that I should mention, even though it's wonky, but it might have a real impact on your life, is that they announced this ability to beef up these investigations into the ocean shipping cartel. So there are these three companies, three alliances that are made up of a bunch of different companies, but they're cartels. There are three alliances of ocean shipping that control about 80% of all cargo, 95% of the east-west trading between Asia and the U.S., and their profits are ridiculous. In 2021, they made $190 billion. In all of 2010 to 2020, these alliances made 1/5 of that. In 10 years, they made 1/5 of that. They made $190 billion in 2020. And that affects the cost of every good that's transported anywhere.
Let's just be clear on what $190 billion is equivalent to. It is larger than the annual spending that was proposed in the $1.75 trillion bill that that the government, that was the last iteration of Build Back Better, called for $175 billion worth of spending annually. And these guys made $190 billion. Okay. And
so
what are these American companies? I mean, where
they're all foreign companies. They are all foreign-owned companies, these shipping companies, Maersk and CNH and all these companies. There are credible studies from the Kansas City Federal Reserve and a couple other places, European Central Bank, that say that this year, increased shipping prices, because they've just raised their rates tenfold, increased shipping prices will affect 1% of global inflation. So we're at 7% right now. Normal inflation is about 2%. So they're saying 20% of the increase in inflation is just from ocean freight prices. That's just one component of the supply chain that is responsible for all of that. And exporters in this country say that these prices are extortionate. They are frequently, because it makes more sense for these companies to return empties to China, pick up stuff and bring them back, rather than take the time to get exports from the United States, particularly agricultural exports, onto containers and take them away. So they're stranding all these ag exports at the docks. There's a bill in Congress that I think is going to pass that cracks down on some of this stuff. But what Biden announced is that there's this new agreement between the Department of Justice and the Federal Maritime Commission, which is the main regulator of the ocean shipping companies, and it has 119 people that work there. Like, it's this tiny company. Their annual budget, remember we said $190 billion just last year that the shipping companies made? The annual budget of the Federal Maritime Commission is $30 million. Right? So they have no ability to engage. They have authority to engage in investigations to look into anti-competitive conduct by the alliances, but they have no ability to do so. They have no resources. So what this agreement that Biden announced yesterday is that the Department of Justice will essentially be the lawyer of the Federal Maritime Commission, and they will provide all the resources needed to stand up these investigations and essentially use injunctions in federal court to break these contracts that are extortionate and that raise the cost of global shipping.
Is there a number on what that constitutes in terms of services in kind? I mean, from the Justice Department.
I don't know. That's not really calculable. Okay. That's not really calculable. But what we know is that this is coming from the Antitrust Division, right? Okay. So this is Jonathan Cantor's group, and they've been very aggressive in other areas in taking on large monopoly-like corporations, and so they are well positioned to deal with the global shipping cartel. And so they will, be involved in running these investigations. And just, it's been so long since any of these investigations have actually happened. They're known as a 6G investigation. That's because of the section of the Shipping Act that authorizes it. There hasn't been one just in decades. And so just even having one might lead to voluntary changes and reforms by the shipping companies who know, like, oh, well, they might crack down on this now, so maybe we should cool it a little bit.
Right, and it's not like they've had a need for attorneys who are boned up on this stuff, because it's not, there's no. All right, so what about the question of the size of these, that because we have allowed for the concentration of these shipping company, and for them, it makes more sense to get these massive ships. Because
it's cheaper for them to transport a good if they're doing it. It's economies of scale, right? If you're transporting them on big ships. I mean, these ships are as big as the Empire State Building.
Right. But that means, and just so the people understand, that all of a sudden means that there's only a couple of ports they can go into in this country, because
there's bottlenecks on this end. Yes. Particularly the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, which is the only port on the West Coast that can really deal with these ships. And so 40% of all seaborne imports come through the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. And that's why we've had dozens of ships waiting offshore for a berth to actually get into the docks.
So what do we do? What can we do to deal with that problem? It seems to me one of two things. One is we build more massive ports. And we should say there's also downstream issues from this, right? I mean, with climate change and like transport, like you need all the tractor trailers to go into this one place, as opposed to like, maybe there's some up in Oregon, maybe there's some down in Southern California, that type of thing. And so yeah, I mean, what do we do? What do we do as a country if we want to lessen the implications of putting all our eggs in one ship, as it were?
Well, there are many, right? So we outlined this. We did a whole series on this. Prospect.org/supply chain. You can look at our entire special issue that we devoted just to this. There are several things you can do. One is investment. The bipartisan infrastructure law has $18 billion for ports, and you can use those to expand them, to find more room at the port some of it is just like you don't have room for these containers to offload them, right? So like just building more room would help. Some of it is dredging ports and giving more options. But the other one that you alluded to is building things in this country so that the ports aren't as stressed, because some of the output is being done domestically. So Biden mentioned that in his speech as well. He had the CEO of Intel up there who built or committed to building a $20 billion facility in Ohio to make semiconductors, for example. So all of those things are good, but the dilemma of the Biden administration is that these things are necessary, and there's more. There's regulation. There's building reserve capacity, more warehouse space in this country, so that if you do have a problem, you have some reserve inventory to deal with. All of these things take time. I mean, that Intel facility isn't going to be up and running until 2025. It takes time to dredge a port. It takes time to add container space, a pop-up yard or whatever you need. But the Biden administration has a sense of urgency, right? I mean, they need to get down inflation now. And the Ukraine situation hasn't helped this. In fact, it's hurt it a lot. We see oil prices now at $113 a barrel. They were under 100 just a week ago. So this is the dilemma. There are some short-term things like these investigations into global shipping profits that might help in the short term, might not. Remains to be seen. But the real problem is that the ultimate solution here is to fundamentally rethink our logistics system and our system of commerce. But that is not a short-term scenario.
Let's just, before you go, let's talk about the piece that you did in the New York Times the other day. We talked about it, I guess, Monday, maybe it was.
Yeah.
When it came out.
Very fancy, David. Congratulations.
Larry Summers got a little.
He wasn't mad. He was disappointed. He was
disappointed in you on Twitter. That was pretty fun to watch. But this is just. Talk about, why we are not, and this is important because there is always this sort of compulsion by, I want to say Larry Summers types, but really in many respects, it's Larry Summers and maybe one or two other people like him who have overseen the turn to austerity on multiple occasions. And he is mad, either, maybe because he was not brought on board in the Biden administration. There's a lot of reporting to that effect. That and is speaking out against the spending that, for a time had decreased child poverty by 40%. And this country has contributed to the greatest job growth that we've had over the course of 1 year that we've been keeping records for. I want to be clear on that because of the New York Times. Just talk about the difference. There's two elements to it. One is the inflation that we have now is not about an overheated economy. It's instead about the way that our economy is structured, of which Larry Summers bears some responsibility.
I mean, yeah, you just summed it up. I mean, what we've just been talking about for a while are all of these forces that have put pressure on our supply chain and led to delays, shortages, and increased prices. Offshoring all of our goods production, mostly to China and South Asia. The deregulation of the nodes along the chain here, from shipping companies to things we haven't talked about like trucking and rail, that have reduced capacity and then increased prices on those types of things when this went down. The disinvestment at the ports, the austerity, if you will, of our public infrastructure, the monopolization, not just of shipping, but of the companies that produce a lot of these goods, so that if any one of them falls down, any one manufacturing plant shuts down, it causes a ripple effect and cascades across the country or across the world. The system of just-in-time logistics, where you don't have any inventory, you have lean inventories, and your idea is that I'm going to get that good off the ship, I'm going to get it into somebody's hands, I'm not going to waste time building space to store away that good until somebody buys it. I want to get as much there as possible. All of these things were part of an economic consensus about how we should structure our markets and our economy, of which Larry Summers was a major, if not the major, protagonist, right? So when he was in the Clinton administration, he argued for permanent normal trade relations with China and inviting China into the World Trade Organization. In fact, he said in a Senate hearing, "I see no downside to this scenario. I see absolutely no problem with doing this." While he was in the Clinton administration, there was deregulation of the shipping industry through this thing called the Ocean Shipping Reform Act, which allowed for a lot of the market power and pricing power that these companies have. When he was in the Clinton administration, concentrated markets happened over the course from the 90s, and when he was in the Obama administration, for that matter, in various areas that have led to inflation. When he was in the Obama administration and the Clinton administration, he empowered Wall Street. And Wall Street kind of dictates a lot of these things through saying that, shareholder value is the most important thing. And what we have to do is, take your profits and don't give them to labor, but give them to us in terms of dividends and buybacks, and reduce your labor to the bone, reduce your capacity to the bone, find the cheapest labor you can, especially if it's abroad. All of the things that we, that sum up our system, they're kind of directed by Wall Street. And who empowered Wall Street? Well, it was Larry Summers and in those administrations. So I just wanted to make that point, that this is the guy screaming about inflation and using this kind of not entirely 100% concept that this is because of overheating and fiscal spending, when it seems like a cover-up. It seems like he's using that to cover for his own failures of creating a system that was so susceptible to breakdowns.
To the effect of, like, it's sort of funny how you think that my ideas actually had any type of influence on this. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go back to promoting my ideas that are going to change the economy.
It's interesting when someone says in response to, in their own defense, my life's work meant nothing. That was kind of his response to it.
But it should be worth the president listening to what I say now.
Right.
You made a good point too. I think that I saw you say somewhere else, reminding people what his prediction was that the COVID relief bill was. That's a great way of betting that he, in terms of his.
What he did was when the American Rescue Plan was coming out, he said, "This is completely irresponsible. This is an irresponsible fiscal policy, and here's what's going to happen. There's a 1/3 chance that we're going to have high inflation and high unemployment. There's a 1/3 chance that we're just going to have high inflation, and there's a 1/3 chance that this is all going to work out." So this is like if you're at the craps table and you bet on every number at the craps table, and then one of them rolls and you said, "See, I told you, I picked it."
I think that's unfair because he also he could have said there's a 1/4 chance for those things to happen, and 1/4 is aliens come down and have a ray gun that changes everything.
Right.
But he didn't, so you don't give him credit for that.
Covered most of his bets, but not all of them, and so for that we can see him as a soothsayer. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, David Dayen, executive editor of the American Prospect. It is one of my daily reads, and actually it's also one of my weekly reads too, because there's a lot of long form pieces in there. Folks should check it out right now and support the work you guys are doing over there. Pretty amazing stuff, and hopefully some of that stuff makes it into the administration as well. Appreciate your time, buddy.
All right, thanks.
All right, folks. Time for us to move into the fun half of the program.
Yes.
Where we will take the phone calls and the IMs. If you want to IM the show, you do that by picking up our app at majorityapp.com, completely free. Doesn't matter if you have an Android or iPhone, one of those newfangled iPhone things.
Right.
You can get the app.
Jigs.
Yep. Also, just a reminder, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority. You get 10% off. Do not forget, folks, if you want the major, massive, almost like unheard of discount, people are like, are you going to do a 50% discount on the streaming thing? No, discount. Bigger than 50%. I can't even calculate the size of it. Of the live streaming show in Brooklyn, go to Majority Live. You click through to the Brooklyn show. But if you want to go see the Boston show live, we still have tickets for that. And but before you do that, go to amquickie.com, sign up to get the AM Quickie newsletter. You won't be sorry you did. But in addition to not being sorry, you'll be ecstatic when you see the coupon code in there that you use to buy the streaming live ticket, and it will save you over 50%. It's insane.
Insane.
It's crazy. I don't understand how we do that. This is like one of those commercials, like where the boss has gone crazy. Matt, what is what's happening on in the Matt Lech media universe? I mean, is everything in Espanol now, or what's going to happen over the next week?
No, everything is not in. Oh, sorry. Everything is not in
Todos. Los Cosas.
No está in. I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore. In Espanol. No, we are talking to Becca. I'm trying to get her Hinojosa, who was. There's this alleged graffiti incident that had happened in Austin on a piece of property owned by the city, which has been turned into a mural in Brownsville. Sorry, I should say Brownsville, Texas, where the city took city property and made a mural celebrating SpaceX on it, and it's been graffitied. And the cops stormed the home of a activist there, Becca Hinojosa, who we have on tonight, and accused her of doing this, and took her to booked her for 26 hours took her glasses. She has very poor eyesight, kept her in prison in jail for 26 hours. And the mayor posted her like Sierra Club and different types of affiliations, accusing her of doing this graffiti. So we have her on to talk about what's going on. Basically, the mayor of Brownsville, Texas is a giant Elon Musk stan who's making sure like all those contracts are good and using the police to go intimidate activists.
Oh, geez.
So that's tonight, patreon.com/leftreckoning.
That's nuts.
Yeah. It's like the sort of thing where like they make apparently no one calls the city of Brownsville BTX, but it's a gentrification scheme. So it's like, how a new development scheme, we're going to start associating this like Austin is ATX, this is BTX, and we have all this Elon Musk stuff coming on. And they came in, didn't show her a warrant, said that if she tried to get shoes on, they were going to charge her with resisting arrest. So really gross stuff going on.
This was really just the sideways way of intimidating activists.
Activists, exactly right. So that was a few weeks ago when we had her on, and it was a traumatic experience. But she said the activist community is really like energized by it. So yeah.
646-257-3920 is the number. We're going to take your phone calls as we head into the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Oh, no. Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. See white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them. Snowflake says what?
What?
Snowflake says what? A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Emma will be back in just a moment. Let me read some IMs while she's gone. Titan Taylor Green. the famous David Dayen. What are your feelings from the State of the Union? I hope you can ask David this too, since the State of the Union had ideas he echoed in the prospect. Well, in fact, we did. Sam's greased up calves. I got the same email Emma did from American Airlines this morning. Such BS and clearly a way of scraping up some of the profits before the end of Q1. What a bunch of crap. It's always snowy in Ottawa. I appreciated TYT's coverage of the State of the Union address. Oh, well, thank you for telling us.
I got some tweets saying we should have done that.
We probably should have. It occurred to me, but I just, I think we're, to be totally honest, I'm still recovering from where like my back is half broken, but
Crowder had it covered.
Come spring. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll talk about Crowder's coverage. Gave Biden kudos where applicable, but didn't toe around the BS when it came to statements regarding the domestic policy agenda. Same talking points as last year. No plan to pressure corporate wing. No plan to make short-term gains with executive action. State of the Union would have been an excellent time to renounce student debt relief or removing weed from Schedule 1. Yes. Instead, it really just became like, I mean, I honestly thought that he was going to have, like, that he was just going to break down during the thing.
When he had that cough come out, I was like...
Also, I mean, I got to think that there's a chance that is like a little bit of a super spreader event. I mean, I think when you're getting in with a high ceiling, something like that, and everybody's got to be, I wouldn't be surprised if people got 4 doses in that room, to be honest with you, the vaccine. But I don't know. I would be nervous. Rampaging Toaster. Now that you've had a Disney experience, you should watch Escape from Tomorrow. It's a psychological thriller shot on Disney Park grounds without permission from Disney. The director went to such lengths to keep its production a secret. He edited it in South Korea. Worth asking your film guy about it next time he's on. Interesting. Escape from Tomorrow. We went to Tomorrowland, and they have a raceway. So there's 4 kingdoms, or there's 4, like, what do you call them?
Wait, 4...
Are they nation states now?
You have Disney, it's Disney World.
Yeah.
And there's 4 lands.
Right. Animal Kingdom, Magic Kingdom, Epcot.
Hollywood Studios, and Epcot.
Oh, who cares about Hollywood Studios? That's like
it's a psychological operation.
I got news for you. Who cares about the Magic Kingdom? That thing is for like 2-year-olds.
Is that the animals?
No, Animal Kingdom.
Animal Kingdom.
Right. What's the Magic Kingdom again?
Magic Kingdom is like where they have the castle. And they have like the princesses, and they have Tomorrowland, and like
and the big lake, right?
Now, and they all
Splash Mountain, all the Pirates ride, all that stuff.
So
all the standard Disney stuff's there.
So Disney is psychotic. They have set up a system that is basically like the Hunger Games. That you got to wake up at 6 in the morning. You got to buy the Genie Plus, which is $15 per person on top of the $100+ that you spend per person to go into the park. The extra $15 makes it possible for you to actually go on rides instead of spending your entire time in line. But you have to refresh the app at exactly 7 a.m. because you're in competition with all the pros who know how to use this. It's insane.
So it's essentially a way for you to like reserve a spot in line.
Yes.
Okay. But other people get up really early who know the system.
It has to happen exactly at 7 a.m. So it's like calling into a radio station to be the caller number 5, and you keep calling in busy line, calling, busy line, calling, busy line. And then, of course, if your app, you're at I'm at the mercy of the Wi-Fi in this freaking thing. Nightmare. So the one that my kids wanted to go on was like either like the Pirates of the Caribbean or the Peter Pan ride. We missed it. And so I got like the next best thing, which was like the Tomorrowland driving thing.
Okay.
And we go there, and it is effing go-karts that are in the size of cars. And there's one pedal. You just hit the gas. And it's not quite on a track, but it's more or less trapped within like some like guardrails. And Saul, he's almost 9. He's a bright kid. He's not a prodigy. He's not out there like, playing the violin well or anything like that. But he looks at me, he goes, this isn't tomorrow. This is today. And I'm like, you know what, dude? It's not even today, because these should all be electric. These are just like a bunch of go-karts. And you can't, and he's like, I can't believe we waited in line for that for 20 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you're right. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's Tomorrowland. This is like Tomorrowland if it's like 1949.
I'm going to look up when it was built.
I'm telling you, it is old. It is old.
Built, Tomorrowland was one of the five original lands of Disneyland, themed to this is Disneyland, themed to the future in outer space. It was built in 1955 and had an overhaul in 1967, modified again in 1998.
Yeah. So it's only 24 years out of date. Why Tomorrowland? Bleh. Like
I saw my first concert
Space Mountain. Sorry,
I saw my first concert at Tomorrowland.
Yeah, you're in a full-on panic. I'm in a panic. I got more to say about this, but I'll say it at another time. But it was just.
We should just do like a selfie video where you go on about Disney, and it might be our most viewed video.
I might do it. I was that. Oh. Calling from a 210 area code. I think I know who this is.
Good afternoon, Sam and Emma. It's John from San Antonio.
I nailed it. John from San Antonio, give us an update on your predictions from yesterday in terms of the Texas primaries and what is the state of play?
Okay, well, the only prediction that I really made was that, I gave percentages for what could possibly happen. So, I mean, you really can't lose when you give percentages, except that usually when people who are who know about odds, they take whatever the highest percentage is and assume that would be the pick that you would make. And so, in that sense, I really
John, let's not have a metaphysical conversation about the
down to brass tacks.
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay.
Let's just do this.
Okay.
What happened in Texas?
So let me just. Well, okay, so it was a great night for Greg Kazar, the Justice Democrats endorsed candidate who won a majority in the 35th district, which went from San Antonio to Austin. Kazar currently has 61.2% of the vote, which is well over the 50% threshold he needed. The 35th district has a Democratic lean of 38 points, so the general election should just be a mere formality. The 32-year-old Kazar was one of the most progressive will be one of the most progressive representatives in Congress next year, and will hopefully be an inspiration to other progressives to run and help improve this country. The 28th district between Jessica Cisneros and Henry Cuellar and Tanya Benavides seems to be over, and the Secretary of State website has Cuellar at 49.98%. To Cisneros 45.4. I've been told those numbers were wrong and that they doubled the count, the early vote count in Starr County. Yet those are the numbers up on the Texas Secretary of State numbers.
Cisneros has 45%.
Yeah, like I said, there's a discrepancy between, I guess, what journalists are thinking and other people on election Twitter and what's actually up on the Texas website. So, either way, it's going to go into a runoff unless there are still some outstanding ballots out and Cuellar can win those. So, but I mean, I guess it just remains to be seen.
So what happened there? I mean, wasn't Cisneros? I mean, she was much closer last time, and I think there was a sense that she would do better this time because Cuellar is under investigation, and she. I mean, what happened?
Well, the big story was just turnout in South Texas, Cuellar's home base compared to turnout in Cisneros' home base, which is Bexar County, which encompasses San Antonio. And I mean, so so the numbers are like, Zapata County in South Texas, 44% turnout. Jim Hogue, 30%. Starr County, 25% compared to Cisneros. Bexar County, 8%. Et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, she won Bexar County by 50 points. But, I mean, obviously South Texas, in Cuellar's home territory, they were not impressed by the raid that happened, and they stuck with Cuellar, and the turnout was tremendous from them. And so also they're both from Laredo. And so Cuellar, the first time he only won Webb County, which encompasses Laredo, by 10 points. And I think that part of that was due to the fact that people were voting for Bernie Sanders for president, and they voted down ballot for Cisneros. And this time she had to draw them to the polls, strictly for this vote.
Did Benavidez? Where is Benavidez taking votes from?
Well, I mean, if you're looking at it on a purely ideological sense, it is from Cisneros. I mean, she is a lefty candidate. And when I first saw that she was running and that she was a lefty, I was saying, is this, a ghost candidate, somebody who was actually paid by Cuellar? That was my first thought. But I mean, you've got to prove these things, and I haven't seen anybody do that. So, but yeah, I mean, she's a lefty, and the totals were a lot higher than I thought, and so I mean, the runoff probably still will happen, and so I guess if people are just voting on ideology, that could give Cisneros an advantage, but I mean, a lot of people vote on, weird idiosyncratic things. And also turnout is going to be lower, right? Usually in a runoff. And so it's hard to tell, but it's going to be an uphill battle. I mean, like I said, going from Cuellar only winning, by 10 points in Laredo and Webb County to 22 points is going to be tough for Cisneros to overcome, and she's really got a lot of work cut out for her. But Cuellar could also be indicted by then, so I mean, that's a real possibility. And so yeah, I'm still pulling for her, and I'm just hoping that there aren't any other votes that could put Cuellar over the top. So it also looks like progressive Michelle Vallejo will make the runoff in the 15th District of Texas. Vallejo is 300 votes ahead of self-funding candidate. I think his name's John Rigney. The 15th district runs from the Rio Grande Valley to the suburbs east of San Antonio, though this district is a +3 Trump district. Democrats still have a good chance of winning this seat, though the totals and primaries do not always reflect what's going to happen in November. About 90% of the time, it's reflective if at least two candidates are running from each party. Democrats had a higher vote total by 2,800 votes, so this district is winnable by Democrats.
All right, there it is. John from San Antonio has spoken.
All right, so I'm just glad to get Kazar, and who knows? I mean, Cisneros, and I mean Vallejo. I mean, it's going to be an uphill battle to win the primary and also to win the general. But I mean, it's a possibility. This is a swing district, and anything's possible.
All right, John from San Antonio. Thanks so much, man.
Okay, thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
There it is.
There it is. When Cisneros jumped out to a 72% lead, that was some, I had a lot of excitement, but then you kind of dig into the numbers and you saw that those were all districts or areas of the district that were likely going to go for her anyway. So tough break. She seems like a great person and would be a great congressperson. So pulling for her in the runoff for sure.
North Dakota llama. Sam, I'm going to plant 2 apple trees in the backyard. The kids want Granny Smith type apples. I like Honeycrisp, but I'm not sure how well it'll do this far north. What do you think I should plant if I could plant anything? First of all, Honeycrisp will do fine up north. It's a Minnesota apple. It was developed in, I imagine, because it was developed in the University of Minnesota, I would imagine it's going to be fine up there. But if they want Granny Smith, I would go. Now, people are going to freak out when I say this because I generally don't mention green apples. I mentioned the Pristine, which is a good one, but that's an early apple, as people know.
Everyone knows.
And if you're only going to have 2 trees, you want something that's going to be, I would get a Mutsu, M-U-T-S-U. It is a Japanese apple. They get quite large. They will ripen in late fall, October, November-ish. And it's green. It's a good tasting apple. It's a good keeping apple. If you get them big enough, I can go like 3 or 4 days with 1 apple for Saul.
Wow.
Yeah. Slice, wrap it in saran wrap, slice it again, wrap it in saran wrap, that type of thing. So I would get one of those, would be a Mutsu. And I think you got to just check with pollinators. I know like Macintosh will pollinate it pretty well, but you check and see what another pollinator is. And then maybe I would go with an apple that's a little bit early. You want one that they can pollinate each other. One early, one late. So Golden Delicious, give me a break. Don't even get away with that. Get away from me with that. I don't want to hear about it. Calling from a 207 area code. Who's this?
Hey, Sam. This is Joe from Maine.
Joe from Maine. What's on your mind, Joe?
Well, Sam, I just wanted to tell you, first off, next time you run into that scenario at Tomorrowland, just tell your kid tomorrow's a relative term. We're never getting there. Also makes the ending more depressing.
All right. That's a good point. I will never, ever find myself in that position again. I am telling you, I will never, ever, ever, ever be there again.
There's no tomorrow for Tomorrowland for Sam's tomorrow prospects.
It's highly unlikely that I will be mobile by the time my kids have kids and who are old enough to go to Disney. But if I am, but okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get your thoughts on so the Ukraine situation. I think is I live in a pretty purple area, and I'm seeing a lot of unification between people that are blue and red because over the Ukraine situation. And I know the midterms are going to have a low voter turnout. At the same time, I feel like there's going to be, I don't want to say less attacks. Of course, there's going to be all these ridiculous attacks that go against Democrats for good or ill by the Republicans. But I'm just wondering, is this potentially something that can soften the blow for the midterms coming up?
Well, I know you're asking Sam's opinion on this, but I'll jump in for a sec.
I'll let you go. Yeah, of course. I'll let you go and Emma will answer. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, my opinion on this is we don't know how the conflict is going to go. In terms of how long this is going to happen. An extended war you can't predict how voters are going to respond because we don't know what circumstances lie ahead. But I will say this, did you notice the flip from Republicans from last week on Putin?
I let him go.
Oh, you let him go. Oh, sorry. I was waiting for a response. I mean, they completely shifted. Tucker Carlson on Friday was praising Putin. There were some elected Republicans whose names are escaping me that were also a little bit more sympathetic about it, cheering him on more openly. Laura Ingraham as well. And then you have them all standing in unison last night as Biden is standing in solidarity with Ukraine. They got some terrible poll numbers back about their support for Putin. I think that they saw the writing on the wall. Tucker flipped completely this week.
The Daily Show did a bit that was sort of funny in that regard. It was called Tyrannical, and it was see if you can find that. Actually, I don't know if we can play that because of Viacom, but tyrannical. It captured some of that like hard turn.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the ideology is one thing, but they can't get in the way of the amount of money that's going to be spent on defense in the coming. Like, I listened to Jordan Peterson's show. He had an American Enterprise Institute guy on, and the message was we need to start spending on defense. And I know we have been spending on defense, but we need to spend a lot more. I also think a big part of it, and look, I just want to say this, this qualifier, a caveat up front, when people are being killed in an invasion, it is a little shitty to talk about the political implications domestically. But, that is... that's what we do here, and I'm in this show. We talk about politics. So I'll just say this: like, I think they realized that. I think the Republicans realized, frankly, that there's a couple of swing states, Michigan, Ohio, maybe some others, where you have a fairly sizable Ukrainian American population, and that they can't afford. I mean. Michigan, we're talking tens of thousands of people have determined Michigan results in the past couple of elections. And you're talking, I don't know, what is it, like 60,000 Ukrainian Americans in that in Michigan, maybe 30 or 40,000, maybe more, 60,000 in Ohio too. This is,
it's not a small constituency. I mean, they can get away with like complete callousness towards Afghans, for example. But
right. In
the United States, there's a sizable constituency for Ukrainian Americans, and also just like general Americans that standing with Putin in this regard runs contrary to like the flag waving that Republicans want to be behind. So like Trump's initial support for him also too is a liability if this continues. But again, as Sam said, like that shouldn't be the focus, but I'm just trying to answer your question a bit more thoroughly.
And I will add that, like I said at the top of this, I think the Biden's advisors, the idea that he could spend half the State of the Union talking about that, I think is helpful. It's hard to know what's going to happen 6 months out from now. Hopefully this whole thing will be resolved and there will be, some peaceful resolution to this as soon as possible.
Yeah. I mean, just on this note, I just happened to look at the top 20 U.S. communities with the highest percentage of people claiming Ukrainian ancestry in Pennsylvania. I mean, that's locked up if this has an impact, because it's most of the cities. North Dakota also represented quite highly. 42,000 in Ohio, 39,000 in Michigan. I mean, these are margins of victory. Pennsylvania, how many was it in Pennsylvania? I mean, Pennsylvania also very. These are key swing states.
Yeah.
122,000.
Yeah, I mean, this is Republicans shifted awful quick.
Yep,
awful quick. I mean, you play a little bit of that tyrannical. I mean, it's sort of funny.
From the Daily Show.
This from the here we go.
Conservative who praised Vladimir Putin and now wish you hadn't? Then you need Tylenol, the drug that makes you forget you applauded a tyrant who is now slaughtering civilians. This miracle pill can help you go from this.
It might be worth asking, why do I hate Putin so much? Why do I care what's going on in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
To this.
Vladimir Putin started this war. He is to blame for what we're seeing tonight in Ukraine.
Incredible. Tylenol works by invading your sovereign mind and attacking any previously held memories or beliefs. Just listen to
that. I mean,
God, Mike Pompeo is unrecognizable.
Yeah, Pompeo is really like
really slimmed down.
This is sort of like what Chris Christie did too. Do you remember that when Chris Christie got his got his stomach stapled to run for president? And then,
he looks the same.
And then realized like, oh, damn it, I just ended up being Donald Trump's errand boy, and he wouldn't even let me work at the White House.
That reminds me of something. Keep going, but Chris Christie's trying to differentiate himself from Trump. I want to find it. Hold on one second.
Here, let's let's talk about this clip. This is Charlie Kirk it was interesting. I was watching the speech last night and then following on Twitter, and I'm really just more interested to see how the right wing is reacting. And Charlie Kirk was on there, and it really seemed like they were reaching. I mean, this is why I hold very little stock in the State of the Union as being actually some type of blueprint for what, because it never works out that way. Everybody talks about it like, oh, this is going to mean this or this and that, and they never do it. And 3 days later, it is other forces that are going to implicate what the administration does. But for a lot of people who tune into the State of the Union, that's basically their fill of politics for the next 2 months. And so it's interesting to me to see what, because I was going back and forth with a couple of friends. We watch these things together via, text, and they're Politico types. Mm. And, we were all like, oh, geez, oi. He's stumbling a little bit. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to make a difference. I think there's just too many other narratives, particularly the media is going to be so, ginned up about this war stuff.
Well, that's a whole separate conversation.
And everything else he was saying was being so benign in some ways.
Yeah.
Just like broad bromides and
flag waving
and platitudes about like I say, I just measured how many times Susan Collins felt like she had to get up and applaud. And she applauded more than she probably did even during the Obama years. And that to me is like a sign of this has got to be really annoying to the right wingers. Here is Charlie Kirk as we watch his descent into I don't know what's going on. This dude, why is he wearing his hat all the time?
Get a new hat. Get a new hat.
No, the question is not get a new hat. The question is why?
We know why.
Why?
I don't want to go
hairline
there.
issue, maybe.
What, is he having a hairline thing?
I'm not sure.
How can you pass as 22 if it's receding? I'm just making it. I'm just guessing.
Is he trying to look more like American?
Well, it's a twofer.
Hey, man, I'm wearing a hat. Look at me. Okay. But here he is.
I mean, I like to wear hats, so let's go easy on the hats.
Or you're trying to butch up or something.
Yeah, but you're not wearing a hat with a massive American flag on it, right?
But it's also, you're not on camera that much. So, I don't know.
Matt uses it to display his,
Bradley's
NBA
wearing
love.
his hat, but it's I don't know. Is it really doesn't want to brush his hair? I don't get it. All right, but go ahead.
If you want to declare war and supply weapons, go to Congress. If you want to actually end the war and broker peace, which is a Article 2, let's say, responsibility, commander-in-chief, you are responsible for diplomacy and for brokering peace, then open up the American Energy Entrepreneur.
What?
This entire Russia-Ukrainian debacle has exposed the fraud and the quasi-treason of the American green energy movement.
Whoa.
They are literally doing Russia's bidding, literally. He has an opportunity to create millions of jobs, supply Europe with LNG. It could be a massive stimulus right now. We could be in charge of our own energy, and we were under Trump. But that was before the entire left wing of the Democrat Party, which wants to keep everything in the ground, no new fracking, captured the Democrat Party.
Okay, pause it for a second. Bradley, will you pull up that list of legislation and executive orders that have inhibited fracking in this country? Please bring that up onto the screen. Let's just hear. Let's
no. I'm trying to give you reassurance with my eyes that there's no list.
There is no list.
There's no list.
There is no list. This is like why Greta Thunberg is responsible directly for this, because her advocacy of cutting down on and okay, how about this? Will you please bring up the list of all the sanctions that we have put on Russian oil energy exports? All that, the reason why they're not pulling that stuff out of the ground, and they're going to start in a moment, right? When oil starts getting over $110 a barrel, which it is, you're going to start seeing like that stuff is going to start firing up again in Dakota.
Oh my God, they're already pushing that. That was the number.
Well, they're pushing that, but I want to caution a little bit. Chase Woodruff, who we had on Left Reckoning recently, he has a good thread, and I put this up in Sound Polls, but I'll just read from it. He writes about like there's a bit of a mirage when it comes to the shale boom. Chase writes, it was in large part a production sugar high that was always unsustainable. The industry burned through crazy amounts of cash that investors threw at it for almost a decade, and well productivity never caught up to where the frackers promised it would. Yeah. Investors gradually started.
Yeah, here it is.
Investors gradually started to realize the numbers were never going to add up. The once powerful partnership between fracking companies and Wall Street is fraying as the industry struggles to attract investors after nearly a decade of losing money.
In other words, fracking is too expensive to be justified by the price of oil, even when it's above $100 a barrel. Now, he's on to something, though. There's something percolating under his hat. Maybe what we need to do is to unleash the entrepreneurial spirit of something that is more sustainable when it comes to energy.
What could that be?
Something that's like more sustainable, where once you hit a certain amount of like expenditure by the government, as if like you couldn't deplete it. I'm trying to think of like what that could be.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, I guess we'll never know. But one thing to know about fracking is...
I've always said there was something that we could shine a light on it in some way.
Or yeah, just blow onto it potentially. I'm just trying to incorporate.
Fracking, people should know, was technology developed using State Department funds also. Yeah. So
there you go.
Thank you, Hillary.
You're welcome. Now let's invade. It is, and I think to a certain extent, you see Charlie Kirk and et al. Doing this as a distraction from the fact that they've been saying for years, if not, months, if not years, how Putin is so great and this and that, and they don't care about Ukraine, and Ukraine had it really coming and this and that, and they wouldn't find stuff about what was going on with Biden, et cetera, et cetera.
And Turning Points USA, paid for by fracking billionaires, Foster Friess, also Koch brother affiliated. They're getting out ahead of a narrative, I think, in that, like, if this does cause disruption in energy, and there's going to be a lot of upset about that, let's get ahead and blame green technologies as opposed to
seeing them as a solution. I mean, look, the bottom line is, if we want to disempower Saudi Arabia, if we want to disempower Russia, if we want to disempower these petrostates, there is a way to do it. And it is not by going after a finite resource that is expensive, both in terms of what it takes to get out of the ground and in terms of all the externalities it causes, like things like the planet warming and climate changing.
Pretty massive externality.
There is a way to do this.
But there's
and the only reason why we don't do it is because of the enormous amount of money that some people are making from continuing to pursue fossil fuels.
But there is a third actor that also would be disempowered if the world were to move off of oil to the degree that we wanted to. That's also the United States.
I mean, would it though?
We're in the top 3 in terms of
production. I don't know how much we're selling around the world. I mean, we're certainly exporting some. There's no doubt about it. And there was a time where we were like the top producer and exporter. But does that, I mean, and maybe one could argue that like our military is built around the idea of, but we could reorient our military.
I agree with you. My point is just that like, it's not, there are other forces at play that are wanting to keep this structure intact, I would say. And it's not just about campaign donations. It's a way that the US is also like able to dominate and exert its influence on the global scale. It's on the United States' terms in a way.
I mean, I guess insofar as that, we control the sort of the keg, as it were, the spigot in the keg.
And it's been flipped on us now that Saudi Arabia is cozying up a bit more to Russia. MBS clearly doesn't like Biden, so that's a bit of a different scenario.
But that's the thing is, like, we have a capacity to adjust to that in a way that, like, we can own it, and that's why you hear a lot of talk about intellectual property in this, that a way that like Saudis couldn't, like these states that are entirely dependent on petroleum.
All right, now I want to just also just take a moment to talk about what's going on with Russia through a different lens.
Okay.
Because we have seen, like we just discussed, Charlie Kirk, sort of try and change the subject from what's going on there to trying to blame an attempt to get off of fossil fuels. We have seen Steve Bannon and his crew blame Greta Thunberg, right? Or Thunberg, that it's, and then we've discussed, like you made the point, Emma, that Republicans have done a 180 when it comes to Putin and to Russia and to exclaiming how much they don't care. J.D. Vance, has he gone? Like they literally buried him, because he was for weeks he was pushing like, I don't care about Ukraine, and then all of a sudden he realized like, oh wait a second,
they should cut bait with Vance.
Yeah,
he never got into double digits.
I got the sense that they have now. And even
ceiling's at 5% now.
Even Tucker Carlson, who was like, I don't care about Ukraine, realizes like, oh, I got to get on board with this. And to be fair to Tucker, this is not the first time that he's had to pretend like this. He did it during Iraq, et cetera, et cetera. And but nobody thinks about, how this whole thing where people don't want Russia to invade and kill thousands of people in Ukraine is really sort of like indicative of the new wokeness. And about censoring. This is about censoring and not allowing Russia to express itself freely. And here is Monica.
Speech.
Yeah, here is Monica Crowley on with Fox's Jesse Waters to talk about this really unfair. It's almost like a false Me Too or a type of like a thing that's happening with Russia.
Joining me now, Monica Crowley, former Assistant Secretary of the Treasury Department. All right, Monica, what happens when the ruble becomes about as worthless as the Zimbabwe currency? Do they turn on Vlad or what?
Pause it for 1 second. Can I just say, like, how many hours of Bill O'Reilly has Jesse Waters watched that he has adopted every single affectation of Bill O'Reilly? It is almost like, I mean, like if Bill O'Reilly wasn't so afraid to go back into a courtroom because of all of the lawsuits he was subjected to for attempting to, sexually harass his employees.
Successfully doing so.
Yes. He would sue Jesse Waters for literally doing a rolling impersonation of him.
Like ending a question or what?
Well, just stuff like taking these weird pauses and saying things like Vlad, and
what's
this is
Vlad up to?
And the sort of dandy flares that he'll do.
Dandy flares.
Yeah.
All right.
Meanwhile, Monica Crowley, I think, is seeing the same physician as Joe Biden is, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, woo!
Yeah, I went there.
Zingers all over the place today.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the political pressure, Jesse, is going to be absolutely enormous on President Putin. And in fact, you're already seeing those trend lines developing in Russia. You're seeing a lot of protests. You're seeing a lot of individuals being arrested. Look, Russia is now being canceled. Right? I mean, between the fierce Ukrainian resistance and the widespread international financial sanctions and boycotts and Russian teams being barred from international competitions, Russia is being canceled.
All right, pause it for a second. Pause it. Can we go back to the first time she says canceled? This is literally this is like the equivalent of saying like they're being called poopy heads. I mean, it's just like how like Jesse, I know that your audience are morons. And so the way that we're going to talk to them is in the only thing they understand, which is the word canceled.
If the Iraq war happened now, we would be like, why are all these countries canceling us for our occupation of this country?
Right. We've got to do the big, we've got to drop the big cancellation on Saddam Hussein. Like, go back.
Shock and cancellation.
But watch it.
The world's like a big college campus.
Look at the look on Jesse Waters' face when she says cancel the first time. He is so like,
he's like, this is the pure stuff, man.
Score. She did well on this. Incidentally, she worked in the Treasury, I think, under Nixon. I gotta tell you like this right now. She's This is back like. All right, so
it's like they have like vocabulary words they need to get in like cancel culture.
Yeah, how many times, guys, listen, show meeting. I need at least 7 mentions of the word cancellation on this, and then we got to use woke, and then of course,
and we're moving off of a Trump derangement syndrome. We only need one or a couple of those a week because we're kind of past that. But just if you want it, throw it in there.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
Pressure, Jesse, is going to be absolutely enormous on President Putin. And in fact, you're already seeing those trend lines developing in Russia. You're seeing a lot of protests. You're seeing a lot of individuals being arrested. Look, Russia is now being canceled. Right? I mean,
touche. Well done. Yes, she did it. That's all right. The first person who could say cancel gets. I'm going to send a muffin basket to. And she's like, nailed it. I worked it in there.
It's like incentives and athlete contracts. Like if you play 75% of the snaps, you'll get an $100,000 bonus. If you hit 7 canceled in a segment, we'll throw you, a free limo ride back to your apartment.
The metaphysics of this are tough, though. Isn't Russia trying to cancel Ukraine?
Dude, look, the bottom line is the memo went out. If you say cancel it, and now he's going to go let's see if she's going to be able to say it 3 times, because everybody knows that she's going to win the show tonight. If she can say it 3 times, let it roll.
The fierce Ukrainian resistance and the widespread international financial sanctions and boycotts and Russian teams being barred from international competitions, Russia is being canceled. It is a different world. This is not something that President Putin ever had anticipated.
Is that it? Do we have no more? Darn it. Well, she probably got another one in there, but you got 2 in there, and so he was pretty impressed.
I did not anticipate being canceled.
I can't believe we've been canceled. Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. They're insane.
I just want to pull this up really quickly because I referenced it earlier, and we're talking about, I don't know how the Republicans are responding to their initial, Trump leading the party in the direction of let's be pro-Putin, then having to backtrack from that. Do you have this Chris Christie tweet that you can put up here? This is just interesting to me, and I wanted to bring this up today, but I forgot to put it in the sheet. So this is Chris Christie passive-aggressively subtweeting Trump here. Did you see this, Sam?
How could anyone with any understanding of the world call Putin's decision to invade Ukraine genius and very savvy?
That's Trump.
As we watch him unite the rest of the world against Russia in nearly an instant.
And then down below, Putin has 2 choices now: an unwinnable occupation of Ukraine after leveling the country and murdering its hero president, if that is even achievable, or a humiliating retreat. Yeah, that's genius and very savvy, all right. No walking that back. History is watching. So he's such a I can't say the P word. He's such a
coward
that he won't say Trump's name there. So he's subtweeting him, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Dude, that's not going to get it done in the Republican primary, right? We were talking a few months ago about how he was, is he waiting in the wings to see if Trump's going to do it? Because he doesn't want to actually target him. He doesn't want to actually critique him. He wants to walk a fine line. That the voters are not going to respond to that. You either go hard or you go home. It's like such pussyfooting. It's so pathetic.
But Chris Christie was never ever going to, they talked about Rudy Giuliani this way too, and it was so predictable. The dude got up to New Hampshire and he was gone within 15 minutes. Chris Christie is, Donald Trump could never have existed, could go have a stroke tomorrow and not be able to go on stage, and Chris Christie is going nowhere.
I just put in Slack, RNC Research, the Republicans propaganda feed, just did a contrast in leadership with the Zelensky selfie video on one side and Biden walking to a helicopter with his wife in another. And it's just how they're going to try to, ride both horses when Trump literally said he's taken over a country for $2 worth of sanctions. When we're about to see a horrible economic reality. It reminds me of before the Civil War, some guy said, we won't see it. All the blood that's going to be spilt over this is going to be a thimbleful, and it ended up being quite a lot more than a thimble.
I will say this though, never underestimate the ability of Democrats to allow the Republicans to get away with any narrative, as regardless of how insane it is. I mean, at the beginning of this, critical race theory thing, we were just like, this is not going to work. I mean, they're relentless. Dr. Seuss didn't catch on. Let's just move to CRT. What? You're talking about like a law school theory. How is that possible? It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. Calling from a 413 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hey, can you hear me?
Yes. Who's this and where are you calling from?
Oh, hi, Sam. This is Rachel, and I am just reporting back. I am right now in Warsaw. I called last week, spoke with Emma and Matt when I was still in Ukraine. If you recall, I lived in Kyiv for about 5.5 years, and
glad you're okay, Rachel.
Days, really. Yeah, thanks. I didn't really want to go. I wanted to stay and do my part and on the ground like a lot of people are. It's war does crazy things, but ultimately I don't really have, like I said, I don't have the particular military medical skills to be of precise, the best use. So I didn't want to be underfoot. But just checking in and saying about, everything on my own little experience at the border. I can say for me it took about 8 hours, but it was probably easier than most people that I've heard before and since, taking multiple days waiting. I'd say this winter has been milder than in the past, but still is definitely freezing, and my poor cats were pretty freezing. I can say is that there's just been so much an outpouring of volunteer support, of whether medical or just bringing material supplies, offering rides, a lot largely, Ukrainians living in Poland, but also just in general, there has been just so much popular support. And
are you in touch? Are you in touch with anybody back in Kyiv?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I work with the NGO organization I help with. They are still based there, and I even monitor their press briefings throughout the day. And I see my old neighborhood has been under attack. I don't know about my own building, my own house or anything, but the places that were really shot up last week was not so far from me. And then, my flatmates that are now in the west of the country in a small town, and also sending reports from Kyiv, and that it's all really surreal at this rate. And like I said, I didn't want to go, and the idea of being as close as possible, being further away, is sort of more a way of feeling even more helpless. Like Ukrainian people I know that are in the States watching this and feeling even more helpless. I can't imagine how that's going on. So.
And did you notice we're seeing also reports? I mean, since you crossed the border, we're seeing reports that Africans living in Ukraine were having trouble crossing the border. Did you ever come across anything like that?
Well, where I was, when and where the name of the border. I went from the northwest of the country. For me, the risk has really been from coming from missiles coming from Belarus, because the place we're in was actually, maybe about 60 miles from the border. And the regional capital was bombed pretty early on. But I could say in my area, people from Africa, not on my end, none of the authorities where I was when I was took on any discriminatory action. It was more just other people being resentful and rude to, particularly to men. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder how much is about old people being resentful that their own young men, anyone between 18 and 60, have to stay and fight in some capacity, whereas these other guys couldn't. And then there's just some naked racism as well. There was actually even I could say near a Algerian fella near me, and who is, from Africa, but also rather fair, and could possibly have passed for Tatar. And I think some people were kind of giving him a real stink eye because they thought he could have been from Ukraine and yet somehow getting out of this where other young men can't. So I think that's one element of it. And then there's just naked racism, particularly for dark-skinned people. Absolutely. That I don't know. I think that also people are just at their wits' end, at their worst, and their nastiest thoughts come bubbling up. I don't know. I don't doubt that there's actual institutional. I don't doubt there's actual institutional discrimination on the part of authorities happening. I didn't witness it, but I don't doubt it for a second. So.
What is the response of Ukrainians to that threat of the Belarusians, possibly shelling or at least part of the invasion coming down from there to Kyiv? I mean, I'm curious. You don't hear much, or at least I haven't heard much or read much about that perspective.
I guess. Well, I guess what was it, 2020, when they had the elections that. Basically both sides were claiming over 80%, and then the records were destroyed, and then the army just kept backing Lukashenko. So since then it's been static, but also it's been clear that that Belarus is, fully connected with an extension. Well, I wouldn't say an extension. Well, no, they've decided they want to be an extension of Russia, and that's how they are behaving. And so there's no need to sugarcoat it. And that maybe in the past there have been kind of more affinity, and I'm not sure. Also Belarus is even more authoritarian than Russia, and it's a much smaller place, so you wouldn't see the large protests emerging, but also I don't really think they have the ability. One thing that's really sad is I swear that it's not that big a country, and even within that, a lot of the South is still not really inhabitable because they got the winds after Chernobyl 35 years ago.
Right. Wow.
So, but still they're ready to sacrifice a generation of young men, it seems like, and I don't know what kind of internal propaganda machines are running there to get people to do this. But I mean, that's one thing I could say is that, Belarus is ready to sacrifice a generation for cheap gas and their dear leader's vanity. It's really the basis of it.
Well, Rachel, thanks for calling in and checking with us. So glad that you're safe. Sorry that your friends and folks are going through this, and check back with us again.
Keep giving us updates. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Can I get a Slava Ukraine?
A what?
Glory to Ukraine.
Slava Ukraine, and
all right. Let me just look up how to spell it.
Slavo-Ukraine?
Slavo-Ukraine?
Yeah, Slavo-Ukraine is Heroyan Slaven. So it's just
Slavo-Ukraine,
glory to the heroes.
How about this?
So, cool.
Charge.
Okay. That works
All right.
too.
Appreciate the call, Rachel.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Take care. Bye.
All right. We got time for one more call. Calling from an 818 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Dave from Jamaica, guys. How are you guys doing?
Dave from Jamaica. Your number always fakes me out. I always think I'm talking to somebody from what is it? Not from LA. From what's the place? Gosh, Pasadena or somewhere around there. What's up, Dave?
Oh, It's part of how I can call in and not lose all my pay. So I'll get into details. Yeah. So glad to hear Rachel is safe. I met her way back when Michael Brooks was alive at the last show he was at. So it's good to hear she's safe and she made it to Warsaw and providing us with info. I think what I was going to go into, and you guys kind of highlighted it, is I guess what I also find disturbing is like the naked racism you're seeing when it comes to people's response to these immigration issues, right? I mean, like, I'm used to it, but what disturbs me is kind of the bald-facedness of it. No, like they don't even care to pretty it up or hide it up. What are you guys thoughts on it?
And what racism are you talking about in terms of like how European countries are
how they treat the refugees?
Yeah, the difference. I mean like, here's my perspective on it. I mean, I think like it's pretty clear. I think the most generous take I have is that you know, that you have maybe Ukrainian, I'm trying to think of what the most generous take I have of this. That is like, I mean, it's just, I think the idea of maybe that there has been a long time specter of Russia in the context of a lot of these Eastern European countries. They used to be part of the empire, et cetera, et cetera. But the most clear-eyed perspective is yes, there is a huge amount of racism involved in the willingness and the supposed capacity of countries to take in Ukrainian refugees as opposed to, let's say, Syrian refugees or refugees from Northern Africa, et cetera, et cetera. And the only thing I would say is this.
What bothers me is the sort. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Well, just
go ahead.
My perspective on this is broadly that like these are opportunities to yes, point out these racial disparities, but also to try and leverage these things to tear down the obstacles to allowing other refugees in, right? Like for instance, let me just like put it in a different context. I see people on the left who talk about American imperialism as a way of justifying Russian imperialism, which is not to say that I don't acknowledge, and I do, that the expansion of NATO over the past 30 years, really 25 years or so, has been a provocation, that it's possible that Russia has security concerns. NATO has certainly shown that they'll go past mandates, that they'll lie about stuff, and they certainly have done that. There's no doubt about that. But to leverage U.S. imperialism as a way of justifying Russian imperialism is got it exactly backwards. You criticize Russian imperialism as a way of also making people aware that U.S. imperialism is equally unjust. You acknowledge the horror of what's happening to people in Ukraine as a way of enlightening Americans to the horror that we have caused in places like Iraq. And when you highlight the racism baked into the admission of Ukrainian refugees as opposed to other refugees, it is not to prevent Ukrainian refugees from entering into these countries. It is a way of saying we need to not have a double standard. Yeah. Not by going to the lowest common denominator or a race to the bottom, but rather to have as much empathy for other refugees as is being shown for Ukrainian refugees, and that's that's what I hope comes out of this, to the extent that anything decent can come out of it.
But I definitely understand that reasoning, but I guess what kind of disheartens me is seeing some of the other reports out of Poland where they kind of compartmentalize that, where like if they're white, they're letting them through, but like if they're not white, then we have to check out your papers to make sure you're not an economic migrant and all of that. So I'm a little disheartened in that sense because maybe Poland's not the best example because they have issues, but I see people being very easy compartmentalizing it. Well, these are civilized people versus the
right.
So I'm a bit more pessimistic on it, to be honest.
Yeah, well, understandable.
Because even when you expose the hypocrisy, it seems people actively are becoming more just saying they just don't care about the hypocrisies. They're just going to carry on just the same.
We're planning to have an interesting guest on, I think Monday, hopefully, if we get her to talk about these issues and sort of, but I agree with the sentiment. I appreciate the call, Dave.
But I'll end with this though. On the bright side, you're talking about apples. I have a question.
Okay.
So when you eat part, I know I'm trying to line it up. It's a bit, but if you have the apple, right, and you said Saul only eats part of it.
Well, no. I don't. I mean, it's a huge apple.
You don't eat it all at once.
That's the thing. That's why I'm pushing the matsu. It's a huge apple. It's a huge apple. It's like the size of a softball. It's bigger, and so I can literally give him a quarter of an apple as part of his like fruit snack.
Oh, but so you don't have to put it in the fridge after you bust it open?
Oh, no, of course you do. Yeah, I wrap it in saran wrap and I put it in the fridge.
Okay.
But it doesn't turn brown.
Okay.
That's my point.
Oh, so it's freezer friendly. Oh.
Yeah, and it's good because I send, I give them apple slices for lunch. And this is like one of the few apples for whatever reason. Maybe there's not as much iron in it. I'm not sure. But it doesn't turn brown as easily.
Wow.
You might actually get me hooked on these foreign apples.
Matsu. Japanese apples. I don't know. You can't grow them in Jamaica. I would imagine it's too warm. But maybe they import them. They're expensive, but they're expensive apples. But like I say, I get 4 days of apple out of it, so it's worth it. All right.
Well, all right. You might have me actually sold on this because I'm usually used to my own variant of apples down here, which is more akin to like a pear for you guys, like a sweet pear or something. But interesting.
Like a Japanese, like a Japanese or a Korean pear. Is that what you're talking about?
You're right. Yeah, that's what we call apples down here. So.
All right. Well, see if you can find a matsu.
Well, all right.
M-U-T-S-U.
Matsu. All right.
Appreciate the call.
All right. Thanks, Sam.
I think I've had one of those before and confused it for a Granny Smith, but it's not.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
So it's better quality.
Yeah.
So Tojo's bald head says they're used for cider frequently. That is correct.
You like apple cider?
Do I like apple cider?
Yeah.
If it's not pasteurized, if it's UV'd, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I won't drink pasteurized apple cider. I'll drink UV treated apple cider.
Why not? Why would
pasteurized just destroys the flavor?
Do you drink pasteurized milk?
I mean, yeah, a little bit, I guess, but I don't really drink milk on a regular basis.
Whoa.
So. Okay.
I just thought you might appreciate pasteurized milk because it stays longer.
I just don't, yeah. Whatever. I mean, I don't drink milk that much.
No, now I know. That was the genesis of the question.
Oh, so if you want to get me some type of present, it's not a milk. Don't get me a carton of milk. Get me
I won't,
apple cider.
For your birthday in the fall, get you
It was about 12 years ago.
Pasteurized milk.
12 years ago, I think it was 14 years ago in New York State, where they outlawed essentially raw cider. Now, I do have...
Is raw cider alcoholic?
No. It's just not been UV treated or pasteurized. And I do occasionally go to a like an outdoor part. I don't know what you guys would call it, a party where people press cider. Okay. And I'm friends with a family. I'm friends with a couple of farmers, and they'll press cider for having like a party. And the danger is this: you can use any apples. A lot of times people pick up the apples from the ground. A lot of times they have livestock. Somebody takes poop on the apple. If the apple's not washed enough, it gets into the cider, and then, you got a problem. Mm-hmm. And, every year, I think in New York State, somebody, a kid maybe had passed away or died or, got sick.
Wow.
And so they basically said you can't sell commercially either UV treated or pasteurized cider. Kills the bacteria, and UV is a much better thing.
So you go to illegal apple cider parties.
I don't know if that's illegal. I don't know if it's illegal. I think it's just if you're not selling it commercially. So
I think it's a gray area.
I know we need to continue that conversation. I don't want to get in trouble with the authorities about my cider.
Ixnay on the cider. Damn it. I don't know how to say that.
Let's tune in. Like we've talked about the different reactions to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Let's tune in to one of the more moronic people on the right. I know we're splitting hairs.
Redundant.
We're really splitting hairs with this. But when Steven Crowder is not, being openly racist or
running away from you,
or running away from me, or being subtly racist, or being racist and pretending that he's being funny, or
assuming
being transphobic,
assuming a black guest played professional sports,
whatever it is, or being racist just in the course of trying to interview somebody.
Dressing up in makeup and wigs and things like that.
That's true. When he takes the makeup off,
or when he's not debating, high schoolers or college students. He is trying to make sense of world events, and here he is last night watching the State of the Union with his
trusty
babysitter.
Robin, yeah,
his babysitter. That guy. And here's Steven Crowder on
his dad trusts him with Steven.
Exactly. Watching the State of the Union.
Conflict. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies in the event that Putin decides to keep moving west. For that purpose,
the allies who spent less than 1% of the GDP, guess what? They should not be defended at all.
Protect NATO countries, including
enjoy
Poland,
your socialized
Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia.
And dying.
And as I've made crystal clear, the United States.
That's his comment. The idea that I guess his line is.
He has a problem with NATO, which is that they don't pay for military contractors and stuff like that, and instead spend the money on healthcare.
Now, there is something to be said about wanting Europe to take more of to participate more in their own defense, ostensibly so that we could spend less on our defense, so that we could provide our people with health care.
That would be nice.
But he's got it backwards. He's basically saying, I'm going to resent you for not spending your money on defense and instead providing your population with their basic necessities. Even though if we were in a position in this country to do the same, I would be thoroughly against it. In fact, allow me to advertise for this weapons manufacturer that is sponsoring this program.
I know it's just like another ancillary point, but I love his commitment to traditionally masculine things. Like, we're going to do a drinking game for the Biden, and I'm sure it's some sort of brown liquid's got to be.
This is his man cave type of thing.
No, yes. Right. I know. It's just like the overcompensation is so glaring to me, but
There's a lot of overcompensation when it comes to Crowder with these things.
I mean, he's in one of those lazy boy chairs too. Like, we get it. You're a man. You identify as a man as of now, right? So, I mean, there you go.
I didn't know his sort of like cousin or whoever's there is actually a comedian named Dave Landau. Yeah. And it's funny if you search Dave Landau and you get that people also ask question. And the first one for Dave Landau is, what happened, Dave Landau?
That is like, that's like the classic joke. You want to commit the perfect crime? Go rob a bank and then go on Steven Crowder show. What, was he a comedian at one point?
I think there's some association with Anthony Camilla and those guys.
Ah, that makes sense. That makes sense. The was the Opie and Andy show, or
yeah,
what it was?
Lost to history. They meant a lot to a bunch of guys, but who cares?
Next generation. Hegemony cricket. That's a good one. In earlier American history, in the New York Times does its fact check, does it count slavery as job creation or not job creation? Good point. Lefty Sparky. Happy hump day, MR crew. Hate to tell you this, Sam, but I got my ticket for the live stream. I also got one for my boyfriend and myself. Only teasing. Looking forward to the live show. Left is best. I can't tell what. Oh, I see what they say. They did the old buying one live stream ticket for a couple. That's okay.
Yeah.
Keith from Virginia. I just tuned in a bit ago, but I just wanted to say that Biden completely ignoring any mention of student loans is demoralizing to tons of young people and myself. This would have been a great moment to announce even an interest rate cut in May. What a disappointment, especially with the midterms coming up. I agree. Leaving open the possibility that he does something with executive action. I mean, this was just sort of the point I was trying to get with Dayen. Is like, I don't care what he says during the speech, because I don't think he's like, they ever look at this speech as some type of binding contract. I want to see the action. I think it's perfectly fine for him not to mention it during the State of the Union if he, extends the moratorium on cuts interest rates, or best would be to forgive. I would like to see 50,000. I would like to see maybe all the debt. I would like to see 20,000, 30,000,
50,000 is his campaign promise. So let's start there.
His campaign promise was 10,000.
Oh, Jesus. Never mind.
It was Schumer and Warren who had been saying
sorry. Yes, I got mixed up. Yeah.
The White House said, we want to defer to Congress and also say that 10,000 is the top.
My bad. Yeah.
But nevertheless, I would like to see him do it as opposed to, I guess if he had said it in his speech that I'm going to do this executive action, but like, I would prefer him do the executive action. Sam's de minimis penis.
Oh, come on, guys.
Come on, guys.
I forgot where de minimis came from, but this is an old IMer.
Yeah, this is an old IMer. This is. First, I want to apologize for how absolutely little I write into the show. I wish I could do more, just like you do. But I wanted to ask: isn't our economy really dealing with deflation thanks to being stressed out by being unable to ever create a satisfying stimulus? And going on a related note, how's life going? That is all a joke question, but I appreciate that. Uncle Mike, inflation isn't being caused by housing? ? Rent went up almost 20% last year nationally, and anyone who pays even a tiny bit of attention to the real estate market knows purchase prices in most parts of the country also went through the roof. Totally false. Housing is an insanely large part of inflation we're experiencing now. It doesn't completely negate the point, but still, come on. I don't know what responding to.
I think Dayen's what causes inflation point.
Right. Okay. And Winara, Biden's speech changed attitudes? ? Wait, I was told that anyone thought there was a bully pulpit with some sort of fantastically unrealistic lefty crazy person. Exactly. Socialist Bear. I take Revlimid for multiple myeloma as maintenance drugs with employer insurance. I have $1,000 a month copay. The best part of Revlimid is a derivative of thalidomide. So yeah, don't think I should have to lay $800 a pill for it for the rest of my cancer-riddled life. Indeed. Dim Tool. Part of the State of the Union that was truly laughable and out of touch was about ghost guns. Like, why not address the conditions that lead to gun violence? No amount of gun control legislation is going to stop gun violence in a country with more guns than people. Well, I mean, not no amount of gun control legislation. I mean, I guess if you were to say, like, we're going to inhibit people's ownership of guns, we were to inhibit the, increase licensing. But yes, I get your point. I mean, in other words, the argument is inhibiting the continued purchasing of guns at this point because there's so many guns out there. It's not going to inhibit. But, a lot of times we see people go out and purchase guns, not always, but purchase new guns to get, the people who've had guns for a long time and haven't done anything with them. I don't know. I think any gun control legislation would be welcome.
Yeah, I don't quite understand. Like, I get the concern for like overemphasis on gun control, and I shared that. I don't like it, but I also don't view like the ghost gun thing as just like I need to see more information on that. I'm not ready to just dismiss it completely. Like, we had Paul Prescott on, and he's running for office in Philadelphia, and like whether these concerns are real or not, they're in the communities themselves.
And let me just add this. Like, I know it's sort of annoying because it sounds like, oh, let me pick something obscure and make it sound like
you did that multiple times.
Yes.
You picked specific examples that were.
Yes. But I also just don't think that like doing one thing necessarily inhibits doing something else.
Yeah.
But I agree that is not sufficient. Let's put it that way.
There were just some things he picked out that were a little specific and a bit odd. I mean, I did like he mentioned raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, although like his unwillingness to actually stand up to the parliamentarian undercuts that.
17.5 on that point. I think at the that everyone can get to 15 now. We need to bump it up.
Yeah,
maybe 20 is too much for some people, but like, yeah.
Right. Let's do this last clip of Jonathan Turley because he's just so crazy.
Okay.
This guy has been. It is fascinating to me to see, Jonathan Turley is in like this massive race to be the next Alan Dershowitz. But I feel like he's already there, and he's just racing against himself every day. It's almost like he's trying to beat his best time.
He just needs an Epstein connection, and then it'll be full circle.
It'll be full circle. And here he is talking about, I guess, how unfair it is to white men that Joe Biden has nominated
Ketanji Brown Jackson,
a black woman, Ketanji Brown Jackson, to the Supreme Court, because white men never get a break. They never get an opportunity at something like this. Here's Jonathan Turley on with Tucker Carlson, who also never gets a break.
About it is that you couldn't do this type of threshold exclusion if you were a school or a business. The Supreme Court has declared that unconstitutional or unlawful.
Oh, pause it for 1 second. Let me just be clear what he's talking about. Joe Biden did not pass any legislation. He didn't. He simply said he is looking to find some balance on the court. It wasn't that like white men need not apply. Nobody applies. This is like you're nominating somebody. And he wanted to put on the first black woman on the court because it is absurd that there has never been a black woman on the court. Part of that also, I mean, was just simply a function of the decades and decades, actually centuries, in which black women were kept from law school and not given the opportunity to be judges, period. Now, Jonathan Turley has completely forgotten this. This is completely irrelevant to his assessment. everything that has happened in the past is non-existent, according to Jonathan Turley. And
just really quickly too, and the idea that this is in any way emblematic or like demonstrative of the way that everybody else is treated in the country, when this is such a specific example of a nomination to the Supreme Court, that there's no way that you can extrapolate this to how people in general in the population are experiencing these things.
Also,
it's so silly.
Just to historicize briefly, Ronald Reagan in 1980 campaigned on putting a woman on the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
that's right. All right, so go back all the way to start it up.
About it is that you couldn't do this type of threshold exclusion if you were a school or a business. The Supreme Court has declared that unconstitutional or unlawful. Now, the reason it's unfair is that Judge Jackson's a remarkably accomplished jurist. She's been on the court for a long time. She has a stellar resume, a stellar reputation. She didn't deserve this. This wasn't of her making. And I think she would have been on the short list without that type of threshold criteria.
So I think everything you said is not only reasonable, but also consistent with like the American ethic in every way. So you said that in a column, and I believe you were, and I should just point out what's obvious to viewers, you're not any kind of ideological right winger or anything. You were attacked for this?
Well, I've got a lot of criticism. You know, this is on just commenting about this nomination. You know, I pointed out that because she's a trial court judge, for example, her many opinions aren't very useful in judging her judicial philosophy, because trial judges have to follow the precedent not just of the Supreme Court, but of the Court of Appeals. The vast majority of those columns are the typical, of those opinions are the typical things you get on the trial court. They resolve insular issues related to cases. And the left just, many of the critics on the left were vociferous and saying, well, how dare you? She has a lot of experience as a judge, something that I readily accepted. The fact is that we don't know a lot about her judicial philosophy. There are only a few of these opinions where she delves deeply into these issues. But also, when she was an appellate judge, she declined to answer the question when it put to her whether she follows a type of living constitution approach of many on the left. And she said the reason she wouldn't do that is it wouldn't be appropriate because she has to follow the methodology of the Supreme Court. Well, that was really odd. You know, you have to follow the precedent of the Supreme Court. You're allowed to have your own judicial philosophy, and past nominees have discussed it, including Justice Barrett, who discussed it at length. So we're going to see how this unfolds in the confirmation process and how much we can learn about her view of judicial interpretation.
I mean, you got to come.
She has a stellar record, except for all of these really scary reasons that she's probably hiding.
Well, let's be clear, too. I mean, if you want to go back and watch the hearings of Kavanaugh and of Gorsuch and how many things they would not address, it is stunning. But aside from that, I love the fact that somehow Jonathan Turley is very worried about Brown Jackson's, legacy. It's not fair to her. It's not fair to her. It's not fair to her. And it's also not fair to me, because people were vociferous. Do you understand that? Like, what it's
the left needs to get it under control. We're not being vociferous out there, are we?
Do you understand what it's like for me as someone who is writing on Fox Nation that people would be vociferous in response to what I'm doing?
Give me a sticker or something.
I mean,
I did my best on that column.
Can't you please do something other than be vociferous in response? And of course, I don't mean actually vociferous, because it was all in writing. But can you not be so literarily vociferous in response to what I've written?
Not that I even heard about his op-ed, as if this was some big explosion.
Right. Like there was probably 50 people who in the comments were like, you're just a tool, dude.
Yeah.
You've been a tool for years. I can't believe what I've gone through. But of course, it's just what it is. I mean, this is what wokeness is all about. She's very qualified, except for now she's not.
Can you imagine a universe in which maybe Biden just never said that he wanted to nominate a black woman, and then he did nominate Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Tucker was just okay with it?
Right. Yes.
And
no,
Jonathan Turley, they were okay with it. They're just mad that he announced that that was his criteria, or that he took it into consideration and said it publicly.
Right. It was just the easiest thing for them to address at that point, and forgetting that Ronald Reagan 40 years ago, had said, I'm going to appoint, literally ran on it.
Yeah, he campaigned on it. And, it's just a shame he ruined Sandra Day O'Connor's legacy. Like,
oh my God, yes.
Against her.
Well, they aren't black, so there's
And
that.
Trump did too, right? About Barrett?
Mm-hmm. That he wanted to nominate a woman.
Oh, no. He had a list of actual individuals.
No, he wanted to nominate a woman
the Heritage
to
Foundation.
replace
Ruth
Bader Ginsburg.
That's a question, though. So the way Biden did announce this, and we talked about this at the time, but it almost sort of like invited this conversation, because Biden could have just said what you said, which is
he wanted to.
Exactly. Biden baited them into all this.
Oh, without a doubt. I think that's what Sarah Palin said actually at one point. Like, this was just a way to have us have a conversation about race. Well, yeah.
Because you can't help yourselves.
But it's not just that. It's also an acknowledgement of an injustice that has taken place in our society. And it is a way of saying that, like, this is overdue, and that there has been injustice in the past, and that this is an artificial, socially constructed reality, that there are, that you have had a Supreme Court that has been virtually all white men for the history of this country. And it is an acknowledgement of that reality. And the fact that the right cannot accept that is why that it's so easy to bait them into it. So on one hand, it is Biden not necessarily saying we should have a debate about whether a black woman should be on the Supreme Court. It's Biden acknowledging that there has been an injustice and we need to articulate that injustice. And I'm doing that by addressing it.
And also by, even cynically, like, this is him delivering for, like, his most reliable, or the Democrats' most reliable voting bloc.
Without a doubt. In the same way that Amy Coney Barrett was.
Not even delivering, I should say. But like, still, it is important, right? Yeah. I
mean, let's be clear. The reason why Donald Trump is president has as much to do, maybe it is the biggest reason, for that empty seat on the Supreme Court that existed, and his ability to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices. That's what motivated the Christian right.
I thought you were going to say white women. I mean, that was a huge reason that he won too. But
all right, let's do some IMs. We're out of here. Melancholy. Did you catch what was yelled at Biden and who yelled it? It was around the big anti-cancer boost section. Biden flinched a bit. It was actually it was around the time that he was talking about the weapons being used and the cancers that it might cause in the context of our military personnel.
Right, but that was in him talking about his son getting cancer.
Yes, and Bogert
overseas.
And
Marjorie Taylor Greene. Do we have that photo, Bradley, really quickly? We should just show that. There's did you see the photo of them heckling?
They were stewing, yes, and they were talking about Afghanistan. They wanted to make it about the people,
the 13 military personnel that died in the evacuation.
Just the 13 who died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were like, 13, look at them.
Yeah. And
they look like that viral video of the sorority girls, like, doing the chant and welcoming them into the house for Rush or whatever. That's their vibe.
Meanwhile, these idiots do it as he's literally talking about his son dying of brain cancer, which he thinks could have been a function of the burn pits that he was exposed to as a soldier. I mean, like, it couldn't have been better, short of them, from the Biden perspective, had they started cheering, like, let's go Brandon during that.
Also, don't they get I was under the impression that at least the members who respond in speeches get the speech in advance, right? Like, Rashida Tlaib got it, I think, and Kim Iverson got it. That's my thing. Like, when they
probably don't give it to the Republicans,
but you don't think they give it? Well, I mean, that makes sense.
They distribute it.
You don't think Iverson gets it for the official GOP response?
They distribute it to the press at the last minute.
Oh, not Kim Iverson. Jesus, what's her name?
They don't. They're not going to.
That's the woman on Rising. What's
No, they didn't. No.
Kim Reynolds.
No,
in Iowa.
No, the governor.
That's her name, Kim Reynolds. God, that's an unremarkable name.
I don't think they're giving it to her. No way.
Okay.
She may get it. She may get it through a reporter at one point, but by the time they get it, the speech is already written. She's already practiced that speech.
My point is just like if they got the speech, like they might have known not to heckle at that point. Not that they give a shit.
Right. Frank Sabata, this Dayen guy knows what he's talking about. These shipping cartels are squeezing us down at the docks. Biden's plans for the port sound nice, but I didn't hear enough about the dredging of the canal or reopening grain pier in the State of the Union. Got to give it a C-. All right, 5 more of these. Demian, is it me or does Hassan have a little crush on Sam? Last time he commented on Sam clip recently started with, God damn, Sam Seder is so handsome. Well, I don't know.
That's nice.
And when Jamie was in LA on Hassan's stream, he asked if Sam smells good. I can tell you the answer is no. Milk is weird. It seems warm no matter how cold it is. Good point. Good point. Proud crooner. Mein Führer. I can walk. Kid tested at Politburo. Sam, what do you think of Golden Delicious apples? I'm tired of getting galas. The apples you name might as well be Pokemon. Our stores have like 5 types of apples. I mean, galas are, as a replacement for the Red Delicious, sufficient. I don't know what to tell you. Sam's Morning Wood Shop. Stop it. Charlie needed to save face. Crab Saltine Cracker. Didn't Trump almost literally kill Chris Christie by giving him COVID?
But it was the best COVID.
Jenna Tolles. Why all the green apple hate on here? Bullshit. Sam's version of Disney is a postal banking conference that has an Apple booth. I'm sorry, did Sam just say he goes to Apple parties? No, I didn't go to Apple parties. Just like parties. DJ Cold Case. What apple varieties are best for making applesauce? All of them. Congressional stimulant plug. Happy hump day, MR Fram. Just need to write in to apologize for supplying too much good booger sugar to Pelosi last night. I don't know what.
I was saying Pelosi was coked out when she was, I don't know. It was a little weird. It was booger sugar is cocaine, I believe, right?
Yes.
Okay. Kirby 4242. I got stuck in the People's Convoy in Indiana yesterday. It was like a 4th of July parade at highway speed. Sadly, I lost my Majority Report bumper sticker, so I was not able to represent you guys in the convoy. They've camped out in Monrovia, Indiana, a town of 1,600 and less than 2 square miles of area. Convoy is a cheap American knockoff of the Canadian one, and we shouldn't stand for this as Americans. All right, 2 more.
I did not know there was even a convoy still in existence.
Jay Tingle turridly wrote that Jackson didn't have experience and his appearance on Carlson is a rewrite. Interesting. All right, 2 more. Brooklyn Sue. Sam, aren't the really big apples called dinner apples? I don't know what that means. And the final I am of the day. Hey, MR crew, love the show and appreciate all the content. That said, I truly think the LOL Crowder is sexually confused bit sucks shit. Cheers.
Sorry.
We're just trying to explain his constant homophobia and transphobia, and the really for a grown man who is making those types of jokes, it's hard to come up with an answer. It's really.
To be honest,
psychoanalysis isn't the best mode of analysis, but it suggests itself sometimes.
Indeed. Right. Indeed. Fair enough. I mean, it's...
But fair enough. Fair criticism. I get it.
Folks, I'll be back on Friday.
Matt's going to be on vacation.
Matt's going to be back in a week from Monday.
We'll miss Matt.
And Bradley will be steering the ship.
I'm going to be doing everything.
Oh my God, it's just
maybe we can
us
bring
two
in
tomorrow.
Dorsey maybe too. We'll see if maybe Dorsey's around. Dorsey, if you're around, let's talk about this. All right, Bradley, Matt, Emma, good job today. Emma, we'll see you tomorrow. I will see you Friday. Bye-bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but